So you've probably heard how crazy profitable the restoration industry is, but how profitable is it really? You might have heard some of the elaborate stories of how some contractors might make up to 80% margins on their jobs. And I'm here to tell you, it is possible. We did it at my own company. I've got clients that done it. And in this video, I'm going to share that with you. What job types yield you the most highest margins, which ones make the most profit dollars, and which ones are the riskiest. We'll be looking at all of that in this video. Here's the deal. If you're interested in water damage restoration and you want to know more about margins, you do not want to miss this video. Let's go. All right, guys, so as we get started, do me a favor, hit the like and subscribe button. Make sure you hit the bell notification so you're notified when we put out new content. And drop a comment. Let me know where you are tuning in from. All right, so there's going to be three things that we talk about as we get started in this video. Number one, profit margin. Like how much margin is there in these jobs? The next thing we're going to be looking at is profit dollars, because profit margin and profit dollars, they're different, okay? And the third element we're going to look at is risk. And these are all very important when you go to look at doing different types of water damage jobs. And forgive me, I say water damage. We're going to talk about fire too. We're going to look at all the different job types so you'll know what you can expect when you're doing these projects. Okay, so let's start off with the first type, and this is my favorite, of course. This is going to be the water damage jobs, also known as water damage restoration, water mitigation, water restoration, the different terms. But this is going to be where you're coming out to suck up and extract water, maybe after a pipe break or a shower pan failure, but you're going to suck up water and you're going to dry this thing down. In the water damage restoration sector, where these water mitigation jobs are, you can fetch all the way up to 80% profit margins, okay? Now, a couple things that you should know. There are cases where you don't make this amount of money, okay? But we teach our clients how to use proper estimating so you are able to fetch an 80% margin, okay? So a couple things that are gonna be important. Your direct labor, okay? Your technicians doing the work for your setting gear, your equipment, and your demolition, like you can fetch a 10% direct labor. So if you've got an $8,000 job, okay, you wanna be able to, it is possible to be able to get your direct labor to about $800, okay? And I'm gonna tell you something. If for some reason your direct labor is 20% or more, the biggest thing that you can do to fix that is to raise your prices. You raise your prices. At some point, you're not gonna be able to make your guys go any faster, but you can always raise your prices, okay? So if you're not making as much money as you want, just raise your prices. It's the simplest trick you can find in any business. Doesn't even matter what business you're in, okay? Now, the next thing is your CAC, your cost to acquire a customer, a lead cost. You can also spend up to 10%, okay, to acquire a customer. So whether it's from a plumber, you're paying a referral fee, or maybe you're paying for a water damage lead from the internet. 10% is something that's customary. You can fetch that. So if you've got 10% in the lead cost and 10% in the direct labor, you've got a gross margin of up around 80%. And these are what we're looking for, okay? These are the better case scenarios, okay? But 80% is possible. And just like, if we're looking at this, if you're not fetching 80, 70's right there too, okay? Now, some of the guys that you'll talk to, they may only be fetching 50%. And I'm just going to tell you right now, pricing is their problem. They're not billing for things the way they need to. They're not charging. They're not setting the right amount of gear, the right type of gear. They're just simply not charging enough. But if you want to be able to fetch 80% margins, water damage restoration is the way. And if you want us to show you how to get started, you can go to workwithshane.com and we can hop on a call and tell you about it, okay? But water damage restoration, the water jobs are the best, up to 80% margins. And the biggest reason, another reason why you can make those margins is like, if you think about it, most of the work is getting done by the equipment, okay? You want to do as little demolition as you can and dry as long as you can. So some of the guys that are doing a whole bunch of demolition, maybe cutting 2-foot flood cuts and 4-foot flood cuts, their demolition is going to be higher. But again, even when I'm telling you that, I'm going to make sure that if I've got $1,000 worth of direct labor, Bubba, I'm looking for a $10,000 payday on that thing. So that's one quick way. What is your direct labor? Multiply that times 10, and that's a good price for me. All right, so we just talked about water. So let's take a look at the next one, which is mold, okay? Now, with mold jobs, you can be looking at somewhere around a 40 or 50% profit margin, whereas you get 80 with water. So why is mold lower? Well, if you just think about it, you're doing more demolition, you're doing more cleaning, okay? That's thumbs doing the work. You don't have as much equipment set whenever you're doing a mold job. So mold is just gonna be more labor intensive. If you're gonna be doing a mold project, you can be expecting somewhere between a 40 and a 50% margin. Now, that being said, I'll say this too. For me, if you're going to follow what I teach, all right, like when you're doing your estimating or billing, a lot of people, at least in the xactimate world or anything else, they're going to tell you that they want to bill $65, $75 a man hour. I'm telling you that you need to be closer to $200 per man hour. Okay, 200 bucks per man per hour. And look, the reason why you've got to be able to do this is just it's super expensive to be running these businesses, and we don't get jobs every day of the week in this industry. Okay, you don't know when your next job is going to come in, so for that reason you need to charge accordingly. At 200 bucks a man per hour is the way to do it. Okay, and look, a lot of times when they're looking at doing a $75 per hour rate, something from Xactimate, here's the deal: you're still in a truck. Okay, you're not billing them for the truck. You should be billing them for everything else that's in there. Does that make sense? Whether it's a truck mount extractor, that thing bills at 200 bucks an hour, and you've probably got one of those in your van. So like, I'm just helping you think about this a little bit differently. It's okay to raise your prices, guys. It is okay to raise your prices. And for that reason, that's why I'm closer to 200 bucks per hour per man. And that's why I like for you to make a whole bunch of money. All right, so now we'll talk a little bit about fire. Fire gets to be really wild and hairy, partly because like, what is a fire job? Okay, so you've got like structure cleaning, where you could be cleaning and scrubbing down the 2x4s after you've already tore out the drywall, or you could be cleaning contents. Like there's fire, you got structure clean and contents clean, right? And depending on how you break this stuff down, really kind of depends on where your fire comes in. Some people put it in content, some people put it in fire. But I would just tell you, by and large, fire, you usually fetch somewhere between a 10 to a 30% margin on your fire jobs, okay? So you don't make near the same profit margin, but you'll make more profit dollars because they're just bigger jobs. Your average water job might be $7,000. Well, your average fire job could easily be $70,000 to $200,000. Like, so that's the thing, right? Like, so you're gonna be trading off margin for gross dollars. Now, that's also going to be somewhere we'll talk about Recon now. Number one, most people don't understand the difference between markup and margin, okay? Markup is like when you've got a $10,000 job and you put 10% and 10%, you're going to charge $12,000. That's what the average person does, and that is not margin. That is markup, okay? And so you're not going to be making very much money on the Recon jobs when people build things that way. And that's how Xactimate does it too. If you're going to be doing Recon, I can tell you this: we wanted to aim for 50% margins, okay? A 50% margin. And let me say this, we aimed for that. We were very good construction operators, okay? When we came into the restoration industry, we came in from a construction background. So we were just good there. I'm just telling you, okay? Most people are not. We were very good general contractors. So we wanted to aim for a 50% margin. A 50% margin means if it's a $10,000 job, we're going to charge 20 grand for it, okay? You take your cost and then you multiply it times 2, and that's your 50% margin. But I'm just going to tell most people this: if you're going to be doing Recon, most people are going to be around 10 to 15%, maybe, margin. And a lot of the guys say they're doing more than that, 30 or 40%. That's markup, dude, and that's entirely different. So why would you do Recon? Because they're bigger dollars, right? And sometimes it doesn't take very long. If you got like, if you got a sand and finish hardwood pack out, you might get $7,000, $8,000 to move the contents around, and then you may get $20,000 to sand and refinish and put everything back in there. So you have a $25,000, $30,000 job, okay, and then you guys may be in and out of there in 2 weeks. So it's a pretty good gig if you're good at it. If you're not good at it, it sucks, okay? But either way, Recon margins 10 to 15%. I will tell you this: if you can get by with just doing the water mitigation, that's going to be the far best thing for you to do. And the primary reason for this, or for that, is this: with water, you can be in and out in a week. With Recon, you might be there 7, 8 weeks, sometimes even 7 or 8 months. A lot of times, or most of the time even, these homeowners have no idea that they're calling you the day that they call you. Like, it's a surprise. They had no idea this thing was going to happen. And so by the time this remodel project is coming around, or they're putting the end on it, like, they're tired of you, bro. They don't want you around their house. And it's really hard to be the hero after 2 or 3 months. Whereas if you're doing water mitigation only 5, 6 days, they love you, you're out. Okay, so far we've talked about the profit margin you can expect. Now let's talk about risk and complexity, okay? Just as you might guess, the higher the profit margin, the lower going to be the profit dollars, typically, right? So like on a $10,000 water job, you might make $7,000 or $8,000 profit. That's fine. Whereas on a reconstruction job, you might only make 10 or 15%, but you might still make $15,000, $20,000 on the project as a whole. So the margin is going to be a lot lower, but the profit dollars are going to be a lot bigger. And so that's why we want to talk about risk here. Now, you might say, well, listen, if I can make $20,000 on the Recon, why wouldn't I do that? I mean, it's 20 grand. That's fine. But the problem with it is this: it's risk. If you're operating at a 10 or 15% margin, okay, and you miss something, you don't have much room for error. you don't have much room for error, okay? And it doesn't take much of a hiccup to zap all of the profit out of the job. And I will say this, if you're like the founder or the owner, a lot of times the original founder of the business might be pretty good at recon, but once they phase out of that and they hire somebody, that next guy is not as good as you are typically, okay? And every time you're the owner that you hire someone to replace you, they're typically going to do about a 70% job of what you were doing before, okay? So they're not going to be as good. So they don't execute at such a high level. And even if you do have one rock star project manager, the next guy's probably closer to a dud, okay? And you can't afford to make a mistake on a $30,000 or $40,000 job when you don't have that much money to begin with, okay? It doesn't take a big error to wipe you out, okay? And that's just the biggest thing. So for that reason, you can make profit dollars on the fire and on the recon, but the biggest problem with them is they become very risky because you don't have much room for error. Conversely, when you're doing the smaller jobs like the water jobs or the mold jobs, etc., you're putting $5,000, $6,000 in your pocket, but there's not much risk associated with it. Your equipment is doing the work. Does that make sense? It is less risky. Another way to think of it is like your job types. The commercial job is going to be more risky than the residential job, partly because as soon as you jump into the commercial job, it's a bigger dollar amount. And the bigger dollar amount typically always fields or fetches you a lower margin. This just goes back like to the oil companies, like Exxon or BP or whatever those oil companies are. I mean, they'll only make 2 or 3% margins, okay? They might make billions and billions of dollars, but it's a razor thin margin. Does that make sense? And when you're running a thin margin, it's simply risky because it doesn't take much to sink that ship. So what does this mean for you if you're getting into restoration? Like at the very least, you're going to want a good mix. Like for me, I like to get a lot of the ones that are not risky. That's just me personally. Also, if your team is not as sharp as you and they're bigger dollar amounts, like it doesn't take much to have a bust month. But when you're doing the most profitable jobs like water and then maybe mold, it's just going to be safer. And after doing this for as long as I have, if you're going to be getting a lot of commercial jobs, you're going to want to be on top of those as the owner, because again, it doesn't take much to get squirreled out and get screwed on these things. And do you want to get screwed on an $8,000 job or an $80,000 job? So for me, honestly, I'm just telling you, I would rather have 10 $10,000 jobs than one $100,000 job. And not only that, you're going to get paid on some of those $10,000 jobs faster. It's just more cash flow, more interactions, more deal flow. I like the smaller ones all day long, and I hope that you do too. Okay, so now let's talk about another area. Let's talk about pack outs, asbestos, and your environmental stuff, okay? So there might be cases that you're going to be doing an asbestos job, and I say you're doing an asbestos job. You're doing a job, asbestos pops up, and it's in the way. What do? How do you charge? So there's a handful of ways that you can do this, okay? One way is you can just hand it off to an asbestos company and they might pay you a referral fee, and then they're going to bill the insurance company direct, okay? So that might be the referral fee. The second thing that you might do is you might take their estimate and then you rewrite it and mark it up. Okay. And you can do it in xactimate or you can not do it in xactimate. It doesn't really matter. I will tell you this, a lot of the asbestos guys, they're not going to use an xactimate. They're going to use whatever they use. And so I'm just telling you, you can model what they do, mark it up and send it off. Okay. What did we do? What we would do is we would take what they were going to do and we would get it and we would write something new on top of it, because we might use this company or this company. Like, it didn't really matter. Keep in mind, we were general contractors. We were very accustomed to taking an estimate and having 3 or 4 different vendors that we might use. And so we don't know which one we're going to use whenever we settle on the job. So for that reason, I will typically take the most expensive, and then I'm going to base my budget or my price based on the most expensive. And then if I'm able to job it out to somebody that's more cost effective later, that's good on me. Does that make sense? But I'm going to build the price based on whatever is most expensive. That way, that element of risk is absorbed. Okay. So again, you can do the referral fee or you can write your own and turn it in. Either way, the insurance company's going to want to do whatever is cheapest. And I'll just say this, if you're getting started, just be careful. If you're getting started, just be careful. Some of the mistakes that I see is a restoration company will go pay the asbestos company, right, and get the asbestos done, and they don't have an agreement with the carrier. And that's just bad news, okay? Now you're into financing thing, guys, right? And you should never, for the love of all things good, never ever start a reconstruction project until you've got the check, until you've got the funds in your hand, okay? So make sure you've got an agreement from the adjuster. Make sure you've got the check in your hand. Make sure you have the check in your hand, because you might have a mortgage company on that check. And if that mortgage company's on that check, that is not your check. You might still be 2 months away before you get any of that money. Does that make sense? And even the best part of it is if you start that project and then you stop it for whatever reason because you need money, there's most cases you are violating your own contract, because once you start work, you're not allowed to legally stop. Typically, your contract won't allow you to do that. Most of them don't, okay? So you got to be very, very careful. Once you start swinging hammers to do that rebuild, you're better off probably finishing that thing, because I'm just saying you can break your contract and eventually you're going to have to sue somebody, and it's not a good day when you break your own contract. Okay. So be careful, get all the money before you get started. So we didn't talk about pack out. Pack out, you can kind of do the same thing. You can try and write something up and then have your own crew do it. You can bring somebody in and get an estimate from them. You can probably tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the pricing of somebody that's expensive in my local area, and I'm going to use that as the anchor to justify what we're going to do, and I'm going to mark it up. That's how I do it, okay? But for us, you got to keep in mind, I was a bit of an anomaly. We would aim for 50% margins. That's what we were aiming for. And the way we got there, we would use what I'd call like a price frame and a story frame. We'll do that in a different video if you guys want me to tell you more about that. But that's a whole other topic, right? Like, how do you begin the negotiation? But like, you just start. It's like bracket selling. It's somewhere between this, and as long as you get them in that bracket, anything in the middle is going to be fine. And that's how we would negotiate a price with an adjuster. And if y'all want me to go over more stuff like that, drop a comment down below about the price frame and story frame and how we do bracket selling, and I'll come back and make another video on that as well. All right, so let's bring this thing in for a landing, okay? Water jobs. You can get 70 to 80% margins on your water jobs. Even if you're not that good at it, 60%, okay? But if you're really good at it, 70 to 80% margins. And if you're not doing it that way, you need to price it better, and you need to go to workwithshane.com and we can teach you how we do it, okay? So 70 to 80% margins for water. Mold jobs. 40, 50% margins on your mold, okay? 40, 50%. Fires, 10 to 30%, depending on how you structure this stuff. And then recon, same thing, 10, 15% on your recon jobs. Most profit margins, water, then mold. Most profit dollars gonna be your recon and your fire, okay? Recon and fire are the highest profit dollars, but the lowest margin. So if you just look at it on a sliding scale, the higher the margin, the lower the dollars, etc. And you'll find your sweet spot, okay? $10,000 jobs, really good. $8,000 profit. Oh, love it. Love it, love it, love it. But the biggest thing that you need to remember is just remember, as you go doing the fire, as you go do the recon, those are going to become much more risky. Does that make sense? All right, so in water damage restoration, I also want to tell you the two biggest problems that you will find in restoration, okay? It's very profitable, but getting consistent jobs and then getting paid for those jobs. The insurance company, they don't like to pay claims, and if they can minimize it, they will. So for that reason, I've got two playlists. One is on how to get more water damage jobs or leads, and the other one is how to do proper estimating and billing and to stop fighting with adjusters. So whichever one you want, go click on that. There's a playlist there. It'll go all the way through it. We'll see you in one of those videos.